Oh, yeah.
Yes!
You know what time it is.
Boom shakalaka!
Raptors Republic. Time to call the doctor, son.
The doctor is in.
PhDsteve. The doc's talking rap stats and who facts like it's Christmas. Dropping points and making specs that you won't be. Man, get ready to ball. Cause he's talking hoop, he's got the scoop. Cutting right through the pool, give you the loop. With a hoop's brain for big spout the size of Ben Wallace's. On Raps Republic and a tune, so click and read. Ooh, drop your pants and cough. Cause the doc is in, so let's begin. Affiliate to ESPN.
It's Rapcast with PhDsteve on Raptors Republic.
Ooh, doctor.
Hello and welcome to the NBA Draft Preview Podcast, here being simulcast both on RaptorsRepublic.com and allinsportstalk.com. I'm Steve Gennaro. Raptors Republic listeners will know me as PhDsteve, the grandfather of podcasting in the six. And if you've listened to Raptors Republic before, you know that we cover the draft. And by we, I don't mean just me. I mean the worldwide round table. So they're here right now. I'm going to introduce them in 1 second. But for those of you from allinsportstalk.com who are listening, thanks for the continual listens and follows. We're on Twitter at allinsportstalk, hashtag All In Network. Okay, let's get down to business. We came to talk NBA, we came to talk draft, and we came to talk Raptors basketball. I have the Worldwide Roundtable with me in Gainesville, Florida, at the University of Florida, soon to be called Dr. Gennaro. This is my brother Mike, and he knows college basketball. Mike, how are you?
He ain't heavy. He's my brother.
I'm doing well. It is dark and stormy in Gainesville.
Okay, I know that also in Gainesville, but not in the same building anymore, or even in the same location, is the brain from the South. He is the prophet, hashtag pig farmer, Greg Mason. Greg, how are you?
Being a genius certainly has its advantages.
I'm good, man.
Every time I see Clint Capella, I think of you, man. Every time I see Clint Capella, I think of you.
Ouch. Thanks, buddy.
And joining me, of course, in the solar vortex is my good friend Blair Miller from the Fifth Quarter blog at TF Quarter on Twitter, also part of the hashtag All In Network. Blair, how are you?
Yeah, boy!
Oh, yeah. What time is it? I'm doing really good.
Reunited and it feels so good.
So we're here to talk Raptors, and we're going to talk draft. Let's start at the top of the draft first, non-Raptors, and then we'll get into the Toronto Raptors themselves, who have the 9th pick and the 27th pick, and we'll go through who we think the Raptors will draft at 9 and 27, possible trade scenarios, etc. Again, you're listening to this either on RaptorsRepublic.com or allinsportstalk.com, and if you're listening to it from one venture, why not go and check out the other? All In Sports Talk is now the home of me, so I've left Raptors Republic, and it's started my own thing over there, but this is what I have to do. See, like every year I got to come back and just give a little bit to Raptors Republic. So here's the little bit that we're giving back to the Toronto community. Okay, let's talk about the top of the draft. We have two names that people keep talking about. 76ers have really narrowed it down to two, or have they? Who do you think the 76ers take at the top of the draft? Mike, to you.
I think if either of these guys were a pure center, they would have taken either of them for sure, and it would have been a question. I think they take the player, I think, with the most polish and upside. I think they take Simmons. I think that's probably the player that they want. I think offensively, he's going to add a lot to that team. It's his defense, his hustle, his drive, his motor. All of those things are questionable. And having seen him play against Florida, he looks like he just zones out at time and just relies on his natural talents, which are great. He's gonna, he has a lot of natural talent, and I think if they can ever get him to just lock in mentally, he'd be a fantastic player. But his upside is incredible. So I think that's probably where they're gonna go on draft day.
You know, Greg, if we just look back a few seasons, you had tagged Embiid as a player that you thought would go very high, and the 76ers agreed. Now they have this glut of big bodies. Are they still looking at Simmons, you think, or do they maybe look to Ingram, who probably plays the small forward, or maybe even look somewhere else? Maybe, there's a huge gap in Philadelphia in the point guard position.
I think it's pretty much a very safe bet that they'll go with Simmons because I think you just have to go for the most transcendent player in the draft, and that's Simmons hands down. When you have the number one pick, your hands are kind of tied in the sense that you have to go for the guy that's going to change gives you the best chance of changing your franchise, and that's Simmons. So, and he's been reportedly just like totally focused in the last 2 months, off the map, just only focusing on basketball. So, I think he's going to be a really good player. I understand why you would go for Simmons in terms of he fits the modern mold of an NBA player a little more safely, and he fits their team a little more safely. But I would go with Simmons. I think he's got the chance to transcend.
Even with all those big bodies that they have right there in Philly, and more as well with players coming from overseas from previous draft picks, they got like 5 guys who are going to play the power forward next season.
Well, I think that's their goal. Their goal is to have 5 guys 6'10" and above just run the game.
I didn't know Isaiah Thomas was the general manager of the Philadelphia 76ers.
Does any? I don't know. I'm a little older than you guys, but back in the Lakers versus Celtics video game, and you could have the Milwaukee Bucks, and you could put Larry Krastowski, Frank Burkowski, and Jack Sikma. They were all on the same team, and you could just put 4 guys that were 6'10" or taller on the team, and they just block everything. And then you'd have Alvin Robertson had a programmed dunk off of the backboard. Anytime you got him near the free throw line, he'd just throw it off of the backboard and dunk it to himself. And then you'd have 4 guys that were 6'10", so you'd just run around in a hilarious cheating video game way and block everybody, and then have some. So the Sixers just, I don't know if they'll draft this guy, but they need just a small guy that can throw it to himself off the backboard now.
Yeah, but the problem is that Ingram doesn't bring that for them, because Ingram is still just way more raw. He's not ready. He's just not ready, right? So it's way more upside.
The Sixers need playmakers big time, and Simmons is top 3 playmaker in the whole draft. Absolutely. And I do think they're going to they'll sell low on Jaleel because they just want a guard. I think they're getting rid of Okafor. I could see him maybe going to the Pelicans at 6. For like Jamal Murray or something like that, but
they're definitely
try to solve this problem with the trade.
Wow, that would be a very interesting deal if we saw Okafor go to in number 6, and we see the 76ers get their hands on Murray as well. Of course, Coach Calipari is saying that Murray should go number 1 overall. I see some draft boards right now suggesting that he'll fall to the Raptors at 9. Wow. We'll talk about whether or not he fits with the Raptors in a minute, but let's stay at the top of the draft and get Blair's take. Blair, considering the other player that we're talking about here is Dookie, I think I know who you're going to go with, but who do you think the Sixers take at number 1?
Well, I think they should take Simmons, but it's not some anti-Duke thing, although I'd love to milk that. It's just that I think Ingram is a lot closer in style and skill set and body type to Noel and to several other guys they have than Simmons. I don't know if I'd call Simmons transcendent yet. He has the potential to be, but he's a little bit more of a different type of player. Ingram fits into the same 3 or 4 guys they've drafted in the top 1 or 2, 3 picks over the last several years, and I think they need to move outside of that. They need to move outside of everything they've been doing. So I do think Simmons is the move. If they hold on to the pick. I think this draft is difficult, and they all get more difficult. I think there's pretty much a consensus on who's 1 or 2, just which order, Ingram or Simmons, and after that it's a crapshoot.
Well, if Philadelphia is dealing bodies and the Raptors want to deal the number 9 pick, if I'm the Raptors at 9 and Jamal Murray's on the board, and we know that Philly has an interest in picking up him as a point guard, I'm looking to acquire the rights to Dario Saric, who is available to come over this year as well and play. I think he would slot in very nicely into what the Raptors would do. And of course, because he's drafted from 2014, he's just a little bit older, a little bit more ready to play, having played overseas as well in Turkey for the last couple seasons. And I think that's more the type of player that the Raptors might like to pick up in that 4 spot.
Yeah, no, true. I do think, though, one thing is the Celtics are everything in this draft, in my opinion.
As in the draft will change at 3 based on because we're going Simmons. So we're saying Simmons and Ingram go 1 and 2. Then at 3, do the Celtics keep? If they keep, who do they pick? Do they deal? If they deal, what happens next?
They have 7 picks in this draft.
Yeah, they're going to stash a lot of guys.
Obviously, they're not using all of the picks, or not all of those picks will play in the NBA this year, but they have 7 picks. The Celtics kind of control the landscape of the draft, in my opinion.
Okay, let's take this then as a moment to say we've got 1 and 2, Simmons and Ingram. It's pretty much decided that that's going 1 and 2, which of course everyone knows then means that Brian Colangelo is going to draft Jack Bender or someone like that, number 1 overall. So just be ready for it. But all jokes aside, if you said, Blair, you said Simmons may or may not be a transcendental or something, big word, type of talent.
Transcendent.
Thank you. That was the word. That type of talent. And Greg, you were talking about sort of he's a generational type of player potentially. Outside of Simmons and Ingram, is there anybody else in this draft you think that meets that description or who could be that type of player? Mike, to you.
I like Chris Dunn. I think that
the point guard from Providence.
Providence point guard, the junior. I think he's really athletic. He's got the defensive capabilities. He's got really good floor vision for a guard. But I think if he ever learned how to get his jump shot off, I think he could actually be a really good guard in the league. So I think he would be one. I guess take your pick on Marquise Chris. There's a lot of, I guess, going back and forth on him. Another guy with a lot of size. This is the Washington freshman. He's got a lot of athleticism and shooting ability. Like, I really like what Chris brings to the floor. But again, another work in progress. He's a young guy who still needs to have his body fill out, but someone who actually could be really good down the road. So there's a couple of guys still that are crapshoots. And my guess would be Chris and Dunn are the two sort of like crapshoots going forward.
Okay, but not at that next level of talent after you get out of 1 and 2. Greg, what do you think after 1 and 2? Is there anybody else who fits that description of that word that Blair used that I can't remember?
Greg first. Don't blame me.
I think that I think everybody after the 1 and 2 have too many fatal flaws that don't get them to that level. Like, I think Bender's really talented, and I think he's really mature and smart, but his physical build isn't super impressive, and his explosiveness isn't very impressive. So I think he'll be a really good player, but and for example, Marquise Chris, his ceiling is really high, but I don't know, his defensive rebounding and all that are just major red flags. So I just don't think it's a great draft. I think there's a lot of like solid role players, but I don't think it's a great draft for top end talent.
All right, what do you think, Blair?
Well, I'll agree with Greg first off. We could look at it 5 or 6 years from now in hindsight and think there were a lot of great players once they develop, but I do think part of the reason it's a crapshoot is that there are no standout players, really. But for me, after the 1 and 2, Buddy Hield.
Okay.
I'm serious. No, I'm serious. Like, he's super athletic, more than a lot of people give him credit for. Especially, like, he really improved his game around the rim. He's got elevation. A lot of people don't really recognize that. He just gets that, shooter moniker. And man, is he ever a good shooter, but he's super athletic. He's got ups. He's got the ability to play defense if they can coach it to him. And the only thing I worry about is his shot. I don't know if you guys have noticed, there's this little hitch and it takes a little extra second, and he whips this crazy rotation onto the ball. The ball has probably the fastest rotation maybe I've ever seen on a jumper, but it's because he holds it up above his head just this 1 extra second, and his arm is super elongated at the rim, and that might, a split second is such a crucial thing in getting a jumper off, especially a 3-pointer off these days. I don't know if that'll pose an issue for him, but yeah, I think he's great.
I do have some concerns about the draft itself, as already been raised by you guys. But whether or not we can look at it as being a high quality draft after 1 and 2, I think there's a lot of role players in here. I agree with that as well. I also think that one of the issues here is we've talked about so many times in the past on Raptors Republic when we talked about draft in college basketball, the parity in college basketball, whether that was good or bad and one and dones, etc. But if I look at this draft here, if I look to the big programs, the big schools, the developers, the factories of elite level talent, there's just nothing in this draft in the first round. You have Ingram, who's at the top of the draft. And then after that, Kentucky has 3 people projected to go in the first round, which is a small crop for Calipari, but none of them were good players at Kentucky last year. None of them were, like legitimate starters on a national title contending Kentucky team.
I think Tyler Ulis is. He's just so short.
I think Ulis he's just such a great ball facilitator, and he's not a great scorer, and so he just gets overlooked a lot. And
it's
it
like
also helps.
TJ Ford kind of guy almost.
Yeah, but without the scoring ability, at least like TJ Ford could get to the basket and score. Ulis just hasn't shown that real drive to do that, but he's really fast. He's really small like TJ Ford. I think that's a really good comparison.
We've got no Florida. We've got no North Carolina. We have no UCLA. I mean, there's a lot of big programs that are largely absent, that are normally, again, factories of talent that we don't see right now. And that might speak more to parity, how guys are just going wherever they want now because of how the game has changed to college basketball. But I also think it speaks to how soft this draft is in the middle. It's a little bit, there's a lot at the top there. The 1 and 2, those both seem like big players. And then when I think, like Blair said, a couple years down the road, we'll look back and say when guys have developed, we'll see what it looks like. I actually think that the quality in this draft is going to go in 20, 26, 34, 41. The guys who are going to jump from this draft, I think, are going to get overlooked because the things that push people up the draft board, upside motor, all those, buzz terms, whatever it may be, are going to overlook what, who the best players in this draft actually are and the ones that are most NBA ready.
To me, a great example of that, Steve, is Bryce Johnson.
Where do you think he goes?
I think he goes in the super late teens, early 20s, but I think he's going to give way better value than that 3 or 4 years.
I think he'll go later than that.
Yeah, I was going to say I'd be surprised if he doesn't if he goes anywhere before 25.
Yeah, but he's a small ball player. He can't stretch it with his jumper yet. But look at Paul Millsap developed a 3. Look at all these other guys, and Bryce Johnson has so much athleticism and a nose for the rim. I think he could be a good player in 3.
And he's again big program player for those who don't know, power forward from North Carolina, and a senior. And seniors tend to drop in the draft over the last few seasons, probably over the last decade. We can see the change where people stop wanting ready-made players because they're already shaped and formed, and they want the upside, the talent, the potential there when they're drafting with first-round picks.
Yeah, and he's got a Draymond Green type of attitude too. Like he'll get whiny at times, but he's also cutthroat.
Yeah, but he's 6'11" though. He's sized very differently than Draymond though. Too.
Well, no, I just mean the attitude. I just meant psychologically. But I think he could be a good player, and he's from big school.
Okay, let's look to the Raptors now specifically. Let's look to number 9, and let's start with the question everybody wants to know: is are the Raptors keeping the pick? I'll just go around. Tell me if you think they're keeping the pick or not, and if you think they're going to deal the pick, what type of deal would you anticipate the team making? Mike, to you.
I think they're keeping this pick. I don't think they're going to deal it because I think they're going to re-sign DeMar DeRozan, and I think if they do that, they keep this pick.
Greg?
I think they're dealing the pick, and I think the deal's not going to be one that's super sexy to Raptors fans because you're like, oh, it's the 9th pick. You got to get something good. But, call a spade, and the draft is not great. And I think they need to find a replacement for power forward, and you don't find that in this draft. So I think they'll look to a team like Charlotte who might want Podol at number 9 and take Charlotte's 22 pick and Cody Zeller or something like that. As a trade.
Wow. Talk about turning nickels into pennies. Ujiri just keeps, I've often joked out he takes quarters and turns them into nickels instead of taking quarters and turning them into loonies.
No, I think you're underselling
Zeller?
The value that you're going to get at 9 versus a player who's very athletic and has improved a lot since he's gotten to the league and has years of experience and seasoning and knowledge imparted onto him on how to play the NBA game. So I don't think you're finding a starting power forward.
Are we talking about one of the 7 or 8 Zellers? Is that like the 7 Zeller dwarfs?
I mean,
Fuzzy Zeller. But no, Greg. I mean, like if that's the case,
Zeller,
why don't they just keep Patterson if that's the case? I think they're looking for an upgrade on that type of player. I think they have that type of player already in Patterson.
Yeah, I mean,
Patterson's a worse player than that.
If they keep, I'll talk about who I would draft if they keep the pick. And I think if they do keep the pick, you got to go for, upside. As much as I'm not super into them going for another upside player after the last couple of drafts, I think they do go for that. But if they deal the pick, they go with somebody who is going to give them depth at the power forward position and pick up another seasoned player at the number 22 spot.
That's very interesting. So that's the first I've heard of that from pundits around the interweb talking about the idea of moving the 9 pick, but not moving it in some big blockbuster deal, but rather in a smaller type move to just solidify the existing roster. Okay, Blair, what do you think they do? The Raptors keep or do they move at 9?
I don't know what they're going to do. I think they should move. We're also talking about Masai Ujiri, who has basically bungled every draft he's had so far, in my opinion. It was one of the things when the Raptors finished their season, and I started looking at the team and like what could have been better, and I just kind of looked. I was like, it would have been really good to have an actually serviceable player drafted over the last 3 or 4 years. That would have been a really good idea. So it's really hard to predict what they're going to do, how they're going to trade. And if they trade, I do agree with Greg that it'll be a more subtle move because of Ujiri's tactics, Ujiri's outlook. I don't know what they would do to trade with, though. It's so hard to predict. There's so many teams with so many movable assets and so many draft picks. I do think a bunch of us have been on the, saying we need a power forward, we need somebody to hit the glass, and Ujiri just doesn't recognize that. So I don't see any reason to expect him to change that stance, despite the fact that I keep looking at my draft projections and the Raptors need a power forward, the Raptors need a big power forward. I just don't think he's going to do it. So I think it's going to be for something different.
Is there a possibility, does anyone think that they might actually trade with the 76ers for one of their numerous power forwards, like trade the 9 and possibly the 27?
I don't know
what to think,
to be honest. Most people have them picking Pirtle at 9. And he's a 7-1. And can we all get this? Is that an anti-cowbell?
Yeah. That's a.
No, I don't think it is. I think it's a losing Biombo.
It is a losing Biombo, but going to a 7-1, he's not a stretch 4. This is an anti-cowbell pick.
Well, he's also not a Biombo.
I think it's more of a pick of people. When people are slotting into their mock drafts, who goes where. A lot of times they don't pick based on fit, right? They pick based on who they have ranked as top players, and they just move them along like that. Which is why we've talked about this again in previous podcasts. If you go back and listen to the years before, we've talked about the importance of drafting through tiers rather than best player available or drafting by need. And that is you rank players in tiers, and then within their tiers you rank them by need according to team. Anybody who rank along tiers and by before they put their mock draft together. For example, I'm looking at DraftExpress.com right now. Well, you would never have Podol at 9 and Ellison at 10, and then have the Raptors pass on Ellison, right? It's completely illogical if both those players are on the board that the Raptors would pick the 7'1" center sophomore from Utah instead of picking the 7-foot freshman power forward from Marquette who actually fits the type of game that the Raptors want to play and a hole in their offense.
We'll give this, though. Pirtle's name is somewhat difficult to pronounce, so that gives us the same benefit we had 2 years ago when they drafted Kobloko.
Yes.
If you recall the backlash we got for mispronouncing Kobloko's name.
I think the backlash we got was because we said that it was the worst pick that any general manager had ever made in the history of drafting, and we called out everybody in the mainstream media who suggested the Spurs were going to pick him with the next pick, and everyone gave us. We all
did laugh vociferously when we each had to rhyme in on the selection, and I think I called him not Bruno but Borat.
Yes, and we took a lot of flack for that, and just for our longtime listeners, just so you know. We were right. Okay, let's look at the 9 now.
Steve.
Yes.
It's been 2 years. He's only 2 years away now.
Yes. And in fairness to Masai Ujiri, he hasn't wrecked every draft pick he's ever made. He's just wrecked every first-round draft pick he's ever made because he said he hasn't drafted anybody. He did draft Powell, and Powell did prove to be an important part of this team last year. And even we saw
default.
But we also saw for the very first time in the playoffs this year and in the Indiana series, we saw Dwayne Casey trust a rookie. Never seen that before. That's never happened before. And now next year when Powell actually is a second-year player, we can certainly expect some more minutes for him. I think Ujiri has a different staff in place as well. The coaching staff is better. The front office staff is better. We've seen everything improve year over year. So fingers crossed that this year they've been scouting well, and we'll get some good draft picks going on. Mike, let's go to you. We're going to go around the table now. Everyone's been asked to tell me who you pick at 9 if you are Masai Ujiri and general manager of the Toronto Raptors. Mike, who you got at 9?
At number 9, I have Domantas Sabonis. I think the Gonzaga, he's a power forward. He's like 6'10", but 6'10 and a half wingspan, so he's not a very long guy. He doesn't have a great leaping ability, but he just has, a high IQ. This was an academic All-American. He's a great rebounder, great passer. He's got the post moves already down, and he's just one of those guys who has the motor. He just runs and he moves, and he just doesn't quit. He scored 17.5 points a game, 11.5 rebounds a game, 2 assists per game, 60% from 2, 35% from 3. He started shooting the 3 this year. But he has a lot of flaws to him that might detract from people. One being his defense needs work. He's very stand up. He needs to learn to get low and to move laterally. His lateral movements aren't the greatest. He stands too upright, and he's beaten a little bit too often by larger guys. So he's going to have to work on keeping guys out of the paint. He's not going to be great at defending centers, but in a smaller ball type of NBA, I think he can work well. And one of the reasons that I like him is that based on college numbers and things that are said about Sabonis, he is Kevin Love 2.0. He has the exact same numbers as Love did at UCLA, and the same things that were said about Kevin Love coming out of college are all being said about Sabonis. I think that's the type of player that you're going to get.
So we can expect him to turn into Chris Bosh in 6 years?
Well, if we're lucky. But
if Kevin Love's lucky.
Yeah, if Kevin Love is lucky, he'll turn into Chris Bosh. And if we're lucky, Sabonis will be that type of player who's going to be able to stretch the floor, but he's going to grab a lot of rebounds. He's going to be that guy who does a lot of the dirty work, which the Raptors really don't have or do right now, right? So this is a guy, we've talked about the things that translate from college to the NBA. One of them is rebounding. High IQ is another one, and a strong motor, and he has all of those things. So, but how well is he going to fit in, and is he going to play the defense necessary to keep him on the floor and not play stupid? He is foul prone, and so he's got to learn to stay on his feet and not jump into the air and draw a lot of fouls. But if he can do all of those sorts of things, I think Sabonis could be one answer for their power forward problem.
Okay, let's go to Greg and to Blair. A chance to thoughts on Sabonis before we move around to other players to pick. Greg, Sabonis?
I think Sabonis is a good player, and I really like his rebounding, his IQ, all that. But I think you can get him later in the draft. So that's my thoughts on him. I think if they keep the pick, they just got to go for the highest upside. As much as that doesn't sound ideal, given some of the recent picks. The Raptors aren't actually super asset heavy at all. If you really just kind of look at their roster. So
really, they don't have a deep roster, the Raptors?
Okay, I think
their roster is not deep at all.
I mean, you can laugh all you want, but if you look at competing for an Eastern Conference championship and getting to the finals and getting over the hump with the Cavs, they're going to need another really good player, and the chance of doing that would be like drafting a guy like Skal Labissiere or Deonta Davis and hoping that they turn into a star. Hope that it's a Miles Turner situation. Yeah. So, you can say what you want about it, but they need more talent. Like the Eastern Conference Finals made that obvious.
And both those players, by the way, Labissiere and Davis, from big schools, from Kentucky and Michigan State, accordingly. Again, I just want to highlight this, that they're factories, and there's a reason why they're factories, and the type of talent that they pump out. It's not just the coaching and the structure of the AAU, but it's also the way in which they recruit other top-level talent as well. And one and dones have changed that a little bit, and this draft is a little bit soft in those respects, but still, very important thing to look at when drafting early in the draft is the pedigree of the player. And Sabonis has pedigree as well, different type. Gonzaga's certainly a very good basketball school as well, but Sabonis has the type of pedigree that comes from his father being one of the greatest players to ever play the sport, the sport of basketball. Yeah,
I love the baby boner. Like most of us, we realize we never got to see it, but word was he was one of, if not the best top 1, 2, 3 players around.
Yeah, Arvydas Sabonis, one of the best big men ever to play.
Arvydas Sabonis, that is, and then poor guy. By the time he got to Portland, his face looked like he was going to have a stroke, and his knees couldn't hold up. But anyway, I think Sabonis would be a great player. I'm totally on line with Greg though about Labissiere. The only problem is this is the thing with the Raptors, is their roster is thin enough that they need to take a couple risks or make a couple moves. Yet with a lot of their key players, I don't know how open their window is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
so you say I kept looking at Labissiere and I was like, that would be so great. And I'm like, is that what they want? Is they want a guy that takes 3 or 4 years to develop into a stretch 4 or whatever? Because I don't think they have that time the way they're set up right now.
Yeah, it's a very good question. You're talking about a team again that was 2 wins away from the NBA Finals. Say what you want about everything else that went down this season.
But they don't
that's how it ended.
They don't run plays on offense. There's a lot of weaknesses on the Raptors that losing to the Cavs hides. And getting Labissiere, drafting more projects. If you can't go 3 years in a row drafting projects in the first round while you're trying to contend in a conference.
Well, they have, though. They have for 2 years in a row and successfully got better each year, though.
Yeah, but one of the things they lost this year, and one of the things you look at is there's a bunch of these weaknesses they had, and then you look and what did they do over the draft over the last 3 or 4 years? 0 of those weaknesses addressed. 0.
Yeah. Well, listen, we have been Masai Ujiri's biggest critic.
Get them into the finals this year and get them to beat the Cavs, but it's a seriously lagging part of their development process is making good draft picks and draft picks that can contribute immediately. And you can only make so many developmental draft picks in a row, and it's already started to add up.
Yeah,
the weird thing is DeLon Wright was one of the older players in the draft, so it's not even like he was a developmental pick. But
he didn't even
but he just didn't play. It was just not a. Actually, I think he has some talent, and I think he might become a rotation player, but I would have much preferred Bobby Portis, and I think he would have helped us this year.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I agree with you, but again, we're talking about one of their upper draft picks, and we're talking about him maybe being a bit of a role player in a couple of years.
No, he could be a better player than that, and I think he would have got more minutes this year. But then they went and signed Corey Joseph after the draft. I think if they had known they were going to sign Joseph, I think before the draft, if they had some indication that was the move that was going to make, I don't think they would have drafted DeLon Wright. I think they were looking for protection for Kyle Lowry. They were concerned what happens if Lowry goes down like he had the season before and misses large stretch with injury. They needed a primary ball handler, so they went for a more senior player who could shoot the 3, who could take things off the dribble, but also who had length and could guard. And we didn't see him. I'm surprised we didn't see him early on, especially when Lowry was struggling in the Indiana series. I thought that would have been a good time to bring in DeLon Wright and give him some minutes, especially because of the way that George Hill was really using his height to exploit the point guard position, and DeLon Wright being a taller guard, I thought should get some minutes there, but he didn't. And you are right, Greg, and certainly Mike has been on the Bobby Portis train for a long time as well. I think in each of the last 2 drafts, Ujiri's missed the opportunity to get immediate help or or to pick better talent, in my opinion, both short-term and long-term. But he's made those decisions, and those have come and gone. Now he's in a very different position, though. Now, for the first time, Ujiri is actually dealing from a position of strength. And now each of the previous drafts he hasn't. When he took over this team, this wasn't a team in a position of strength. This is an extra pick. 9's not supposed to be there. You're a team that, won 56 games. You're a top 5 team in the NBA. You came within 2 wins of the NBA Finals, and you got a free number 9 pick thrown to you. You still have your 27. This is a position of strength. It will be very interesting to see what Masai Ujiri does when he gets to deal from strength instead of from weakness, where he's trying to basically move things around and use smoke and mirrors to get the Knicks to make trades with him. Basically, now he's from a different spot. Greg, at 9, you think they should go?
Very good point, Steve. Very good point.
Thank you, Greg. At 9, you think they should go for upside? Who do you like? Who is the upside player that you like at 9 for the Toronto Raptors?
I would go Skal Labissiere or Deonta Davis. The reason I kind of lean towards Deonta Davis is because the thing that worries me about Skal is he's such a nice guy, and if you watched him play this year, it looked like he had no clue, and I think a lot of that comes from the injuries he had in high school, and that he was away from the game for so long. And when you lose confidence, it's hard to get it back. But he's also just a nice guy. I think he could be a major steal and somebody that gets the Raptors to a level that no other guy available to them at that draft slot would do. But I think Deonta Davis is a bit of a safer pick in the sense that he still has a lot of upside. He's a modern mobile big. He can develop a jump shot and stretch the floor. So he's a little safer, so that's why I went with Deonta Davis.
Do you think there's a chance that Skal, I'm just going to call him Skal, do you think there's a chance that Skal goes earlier, a team looking at that upside again, 7 feet, 20 years old, freshman from Kentucky, and says, okay, we're going to take him at, let's say, number 8, Sacramento, or 7, Denver, and then all of a sudden you've got a Jaylen Brown or a Jamal Murray or heaven forbid, Dragon Bender dropping all the way down to the Raptors. Do you think there's a chance that because to me, he's one of the players that I look at and I say, who's going to get overdrafted in this draft? And he's high on that list for me, is a guy who's going to go in the top 7 or 8 that doesn't really belong in the top 10. Greg, you think there's a chance of that happening?
Yeah, I think those narratives about, anytime a guy is projected as a top overall pick going into their freshman season in college, even if they don't perform well, that kind of like hope of what they could have been sticks. And Skal was supposed to be the number 1 pick this year, right? It's supposed to be 1 or 2, and I think that's going to carry a lot of weight, and it could lead to him being drafted higher than maybe he deserves.
All right, Blair, let's move on to you now at number 9. You've talked a little bit on both sides here of the need for immediate help and the need for picking the best player available. So where do you sit at number 9 if you're making the draft pick?
Well, I've kind of gone with, I think, the same person you're going to go, so I kind of wanted to wait a little bit. But
I'll go first if you want to piggyback on me.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on you. It wouldn't be the first time.
I'm not sure if I need to edit that out. Okay.
If it's with me, you probably do. Just err on the side of caution.
Yeah. So the player that I think the Raptors should take at number 9 is Denzel Valentine. Now, I posted this on Twitter just the other day @_S Gennaro, and there was already some feedback about why the Raptors shouldn't take him. But I'll tell you why I like Denzel Valentine. Because Denzel Valentine is a true 3-and-D, which is the Raptors have never had, in my opinion, never had in their entire team's history. He can provide length on D. He's a great passer. He runs well off screens and pick and roll. And can pass well out of the pick and roll as well. And next to Buddy Hield, I think arguably he's the best spot-up shooter in this draft. Draft Express has him ranked in the low teens, and ESPN has him ranked in the 20s. So the thing you would say is, why take him at 9? Well, I'll say for 2 reasons. One, I think we've seen Ujiri draft whomever he likes with no regard for draft rankings, taking both Wright and Bruno in the last 2 first rounds, but also because 9 is a gift. It's a freebie. And it's an opportunity to just take a player and add him immediately to your roster because you are a team that was 2 wins from the finals. And now you can just go into college basketball, take one of the 10 best players that's there and put them on your roster. And in my opinion, Denzel Valentine was one of the 10 best players in college basketball last season. Now, I know he lacks the upside and the motor that you find on most draft boards right now in the top 10. But unlike most teams in the lottery, the Raptors don't need to draft for potential. They are top 5 right now. Valentine can come in and make this team better immediately. And in a league where teams want to go small and they want to shoot the three and they want guys with length on defense, Valentine is all three. In fact, he's top 5, in my opinion, in this draft for NBA-ready players. And when it comes to shooting the three, having length, and playing small ball. But here's also why I think he's massive for the Raptors. He's a senior from a top program. Can come in and contribute right away. The last time we saw a Michigan State guy come in and contribute right away, how about Draymond Green? Or how about for the Raptors, Mo Peterson? Valentine is a better defender, rebounder, passer, and shooter than Mo Peterson for Raptors fans, and exactly what a team that made it to the conference final needs. He has great length. At 6'6", he has a 6'10" 3/4 wingspan that allows him to defend 2s, 3s, and even 4s in the small ball lineup. He shot 45% from behind the arc. He's quick off curls when it comes to moving on the offense. Had a true shooting percentage over 60% and averaged almost 25 points per 40 minutes. Off of screens, 1.16 points per possession and 1.24 points per possession on contested catch and shoot opportunities. He can shoot. 4.2 threes per 40 minutes last year in college. He will be able to shoot the NBA three without difficulty. He runs the pick and roll nicely. He's very active and a solid passer. But he can still put the ball on the floor and create as well, averaging 9.6 assists per 40 minutes, putting him in the top 10 in that category since 2000, according to Draft Express. And 30% of those assists came in transition. That's right. He'll grab the ball and a rebound, push the pace in transition. But most importantly, he can go both left and right with the ball to spot up and shoot with efficiency or to create passing lanes. And then he has great size, length, and vision to exploit those lanes. I already told you he's a great rebounder, but even more important than that, he's a great weak side rebounder. He averaged 7+ rebounds per game in college, 8.5 defensive rebounds per 40 minutes. And that's the best among all wing players in the top 100 draft prospects in this draft. It also adds into the Raps' team defense and rebounding concept. Think about it. He can come in and play right now in place of Damari Carroll at the 3 or 4, or if DeRozan leaves, he can play the 3 with Joseph and Ross and Norm sort of shifting around through the 2. And if you have a team that has Damari Carroll and DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry and Jonas Valanciunas and Denzel Valentine on the floor, everybody there is 5+ rebounds a game. Again, looking at his senior year, 19.2 points, 7.8 assists, 7.5 rebounds, while shooting 44.5% from three-point range. His 45.8% assist percentage was the second best in the country. In his junior year, he was the big reason why Michigan State made a run all the way to the Final Four in 2015 and was the only player in the top 15 in the Big Ten in scoring, rebounding, and assists. He played 20 minutes a game all 4 years, including 30 minutes a game in each of his last 3 seasons. He's often compared to Draymond Green, another player who came into the draft as a multi-tool player who could do it all, but was not seen as uber athletic. And even Green said last week that he sees Valentine as the guard version of him. Valentine says, I can play the 1, the 2, the 3, heck, maybe even the 4. He increased his scoring, his rebounding, his assists, and his threes every year in college and still shot the ball well over 40% in every single season that he played. Now, there are some concerns about a knee injury that have come out this week, but Valentine himself has said, and I quote, I guess some teams are worried about it, but all I can do is take care of what I can control. I'm asymptomatic. I'm healthy. The concerns are that it's a degenerative condition, but it's worth noting that Valentine missed only 4 games in his entire 4-year college career. If the knee's healthy, it's a no-brainer to me. You take him at 9, he immediately becomes your first or second guy off the bench, allows you the depth to move Powell or Ross in a deal if you need to, and even provides some backup in case DeRozan leaves this offseason. And while many believe the 4 is the weakness of the Raps, if you draft Valentine, he can play the 3 and Carroll can play the 4. That's right, Carroll can play the 4, which is the best possible scenario for this team. If you keep JV going forward, Carroll and Patterson as a combo with the 4 is the best thing for this team. At at 27, you'll have the opportunity to take another player who may fit into this role. And who knows, maybe Valentine might even be there at 27. But 9 is a freebie. I think you take the freebie. I think you take what's given to you, and you make the team better immediately. And that's why I take Valentine at 9. Go ahead, Blair.
Sorry, I feel like I've got tryptophan.
I like lamb.
That was a lot of meat there, a lot of turkey. I feel a little tryptophan drunk. All very convincing stats and all things. Like, you took the words right out of my mouth with Valentine. I was gonna say Valentine at the 9, but with the proviso that I think the Raptors were gonna trade down into the low to mid teens to take him, and that was prior to the knee injury. Most mocks I've looked at since the knee injury haven't had him any lower than 22. I don't know. I don't know the extent of the knee injury. I don't know the details. I'm not a doctor. I'm not Kreskin. I don't know what's going on there. But one thing, the reason that I like Valentine for this team, other than of course all the things you just gave there, Steve. Other than all the things you just said, Steve, though, is for me, offensively, and I might be in the minority in this, but I think the Raptors' offense would be unshackled if Lowry could work off the ball. And when we talk about the comparisons between Valentine and Draymond Green, we talk about a guy that initiates the offense from the wing spot, and everybody else works off of that. And I think one of the biggest weaknesses the Raptors have, and one of the biggest reasons why Kyle Lowry is at times overrated, is because he dribbles the out of the ball and takes too many bad step-back deep shots. And if he can work off of the ball, I don't want to compare him to Steph Curry in the Draymond Green scheme of things at all, right? But if he can adjust his character, it's a big if, but if he can adjust his character to not having to bounce the ball everywhere and work off the ball, I think Lowry could be an even more dangerous player than he is now. And it could also help cover up DeRozan's lack of handles, too, if he's working off of cuts more. And on top of that, I think the Raptors' biggest weakness on offense is their structure. Not just Lowry hero ball, but I can't tell you how many times, I think I've watched almost every Raptors game this year, I can't tell you how many times I've texted or talked to somebody in the room with me and just gone, are they calling plays? Are they even calling plays? You know, they're just not, they have no flow, no structure on offense. And I think Valentine, even if that's a weakness on Dwayne Casey's part, Valentine can cover that up. You know, there's a lot of times where a floor general can cover up the coaching weaknesses. Look at what LeBron James is doing for Tyronn Lue right now in the finals. Right? And so I'm actually personally dying for the Raptors to get a player to free Lowry up and not have him be the Chris Paul of the offense. Because I think if they ask him to be the Chris Paul of the offense, they can only go as far as they just went, which is awesome. But they need to get him working off the ball more and doing back cuts, doing cuts to the rim. And Valentine, I think, is the answer for that. A very cheap answer.
Mike, any thoughts on Valentine?
A lot of what you said is really spot on. Excuse me, spot on with Valentine. Especially the part about ball handling. Like at certain times for Michigan State this year, he was the primary ball handler, able to initiate an offense. And you know, if you want someone to come in right away and immediately impact a team, you're going to go for someone who has polish. He went to Michigan State, and Tom Izzo doesn't train fools. So, you know, you're going to find someone with a high IQ who can play the game. And one of the reasons I picked Sabonis was that Sabonis is going to make an immediate impact because of the tools that transcend college to the NBA, and Valentine has a lot of those tools as well, and he's going to come in and do that. And I think I'm with Blair here that the Raptors, if they do choose him, they will trade down for him. Someone will want to pick the Raptors 9 spot. So the Raptors could actually turn the 9 pick into either another pick and Valentine and another asset. But I think that's what's probably going to happen is that type of a trade. I like this pick. This is, I think, the only player in the last 30 years in college to average 19, 7, and 7. He can score, he can defend, he can play. He doesn't have great athletic ability, but that's not going to kill his draft stock. It's not going to stop him from actually being a good player and a defensive player in this league.
All right, so there we go. There's our thoughts on 9. We've rolled around, and you've heard some different players. Let's look at 27. The Raptors have another pick. Probably, I would say, less likely to deal this pick, and if they dealt it, they're probably dealing it for cash, right, or for a future pick. I think is normally what happens when these later first-round picks get dealt. Assuming the Raptors don't deal this pick and move into the second round, take some cash in a future first-rounder, who do you like at 27? Because now you're talking about a player who's much likely less to make an impact on the team or even to make the roster, and more likely to end up at the 905. Mike, who do you like at 27?
At 27, I like out of Brazil, Bruno, I don't know how you pronounce his last name, Cabaglo. That's who I think they should actually draft. I hear he's only 2 years away.
Yeah, if the guy's 2 years away, draft him now.
Yeah, exactly. I think, in all honesty, sorry, Raptors fans, that the Raptors at 27, this is their chance that they can take somebody that they can stash away, who's a project, who's a couple of years away. And talking about pedigree and picking people from these sort of factories that create or bring in high talent players, I think you go with the Kansas freshman Sheik Diallo at the 27 if he's there. He's a 6'9" forward. Only 219 pounds. He needs to put on a lot of muscle, and that's one of the things that's going to hinder him from getting some playing time. But he has a 7'4" wingspan. He has a 9-foot reach. He's a high-energy player, and this year, because of transfer rules, he was relegated to the bench, also because Kansas had 4 players who were 22 or 23 years old, seniors, rocking in front of him. So he didn't get much chance to play, but if you adjust his numbers for 40 minutes per game, he would have averaged 15 points, 13 rebounds, and 4 blocks. Again, long arms, so he's very good at protecting the rim. He's going to block a lot of shots. He also runs the floor really well. He's going to be a great rim runner in the NBA, but he is raw. And that is the one thing against him, is that he plays off of instinct for the most part when it comes to defense. He doesn't give up on plays, which you like. He moves back and forth. And I think this might be the small ball center that the Raptors can turn to in the future. He's not the tallest, but with the arms and his quickness, he'll be able to play that small ball center position or guard power forwards with his ability to move back and forth. He's just not big enough yet, and he needs to develop not only his offensive game, which is still raw, but he needs to work on his defensive game. He needs to be taught how to play defense, which you're not going to get playing the one and done in a factory system of Kansas. If he went to Kentucky, it's a little bit different. Kentucky develops big men a little bit better and teaches them defensive footwork better than Kansas does. But I think if you're going to stash a player away for a year, this is where the Raptors should go.
Okay, on to you, Blair. At 27, who do you like?
Well, I should say that I've just given up all hope for Ujiri addressing the lack of a big rebounder. I kept looking for one, and I'm just kind of like, I just don't think he cares. So I've gone back to a small ball prototype, and I'm opting for Taurean Prince from Baylor. He's only 6'7". What's that, Mike?
That was my if it wasn't going to be Diallo, I was going to say Taurean Prince.
Yeah, like he's only 6'7", but he's got a 6'11" and a half wingspan, and he's got smarts. The Baylor played a predominantly zone scheme, and with his measurables, he still managed to block 1 shot per game and steal the ball 1.2 times per game, and he was only playing 25 and a half minutes. And what I like about him is when he started high school, he was only 5'9", and he was one of those late bloomer guys. By the time he finished high school, he was 6'7". I don't know what the stretch marks are on his lower back or whatever. It must look like the Bible, but like those guys that, different kind of levels, but David Robinson, Dennis Rodman, a bunch of other shorter guys too. When they start out and they develop all the ball handling skills and the mobility skills, and then they get taller and have to learn a little bit of post up, a little bit of how to hedge up on pick and rolls, which they never had to do before. I really like that idea. I was curious though, Steve, that you mentioned that they hadn't had a 3D prospect, the Raptors, and then you mentioned Mo Peterson. Not that he was a 3D prospect, but it was funny because I just thought, Mo Peterson, like, are they going to draft somebody else that spends the whole time on defense on his back?
Great at taking a charge. Yeah, I prefer to look at the positive.
Oh, great player, but also, like you said, great at taking a charge.
All right.
He might have had ads out on the internet present day for a charge if the internet had been what it was when he played. Wow.
At 27, again, it's a flyer. I think you're taking a player to develop a little bit over time, may get some minutes, may not. For me, I would take Diamond Stone. I think he's probably a safe or a sound pick here, especially if Biyombo leaves or if Jonas is on his way out. If the Raptors don't keep both centers in place. Stone's a 19-year-old center and was a big part of Maryland's dream season that saw them sit atop the nation for a very good part of the season. 6'10", but has a 7'2" wingspan. Averaged 22.8 points and 10.2 rebounds per 40 minutes, pace adjusted, and is one of the youngest NBA prospects in college basketball, turning 19 just in February of this particular year. Stone's got great length, great instincts, and because of that, it's allowed him to become a pretty sound shot blocker in his freshman season, especially in on-ball situations. He blocked 2.9 shots per 40 minutes, but needs work. There's still a lot more work to do there, and he can develop, I think, into an elite shot blocker in this league. He needs work not only on defense but also on offense as well. But the Raptors don't need a big to play every game right now. So while his shot does need work, and so does his passing and his footwork, again, he's only 19, but I think his style of play is similar to Jonas. He's a load. He's 250 pounds plus. He can score inside, back to the basket. Really good footwork when it comes to back to the basket offensively. Collects loads of rebounds inside, averaging 4.1 per 40 minutes on the offensive glass. Sets solid screens for the pick and roll, which would be very helpful. And I think is a more natural switch than Biyombo for asserting a style of play when Jonas has to go and sit off and take a rest. Has a 9-1 standing reach. Okay, so that's going to obviously make a difference. What? Yeah, he has a 9-1 standing reach.
6'10" with a 9-1 standing reach.
So that's going to tell you about how his ability to affect shots. We talk about footwork and this and that. Yeah, but he has a 9-1 standing reach.
He can basically almost he can touch the mesh.
Yeah, but he's 250 pounds. We're not talking Sean Bradley here, right? So you're not going to be able to push him down on the block. He was a bully in college this year. He can assert that again at the pro level, and again with a 9-1 standing reach. And when I think about him, he reminds me a lot of Boogie Cousins. Now, again, without the personality issues and without maybe the elite level talent, but a lot of the things that we heard about Boogie when he came out, and part of the reason why he dropped was, well, no one plays that style anymore. He's got great footwork, but so what? Back to the basket, But we've seen that. Boogie can be effective. So I think if you bring Stone into a solid team, teach him the game. He just turned 19. For big men, that's that might as well be first year high school. This guy's 5-6 years away from being a potentially elite center in the NBA. He has good hands. He has soft touch. He has nice post moves. He's shown he can hit the mid-range jumper a little bit, so there's potential there. And again, pick and roll, he's averaging 1.23 points per possession in pick and roll in his freshman season. At 27, pick number 27, it's always a gamble, but in my opinion, Stone will definitely have a solid NBA career and has the upside to do more. So I think the Raptors should be drafting a player like him. Immediately, he becomes the second best big if Biyombo leaves, and if Biyombo stays, then he can always grow at the 905. It's a win-win opportunity for the Raptors in my perspective.
May I just say, I can't envision a scenario where Biyombo stays.
Yeah.
I just can't. They can't pay him what he's going to get from someone else. And he's not going to be worth what someone will pay him.
Depends on what other bodies get moved, what other pieces move around. So it's hard to say right now what the roster is going to look like come July 1st when everything opens up for free agency. But I do think that in the next couple weeks leading up to the draft, which of course is Thursday, we'll see some action. There'll be some discussions, and definitely within the first week of free agency, we'll see some moves. So the Raptors that came within 2 games of the NBA Finals, I think will be a roster that has some turnover on it. As much as they want to keep things solidified, they re-signed Casey. Their goal is to re-sign DeRozan to the max and just sort of keep as many pieces as possible and then just add 1 or 2 pieces and go deeper. I think that we're going to see a little bit more transition. Okay, let's go around the table one time for final thoughts. Mike, to you, final thoughts on the draft and on the Raptors?
I think that the Raptors need to get one project in this draft. If they keep both picks, you get one guy for the future, and you plug in one guy who can immediately help right now. I think it's Sabonis, but I am all on board with Valentine. I don't think you need to draft him at 9. They'll probably trade and get some more assets if that's the case. But you are only 2 games away, so why not bring somebody through the draft that's not going to cost you a lot of money through free agency that can help you right away. Okay, Blair, final thoughts?
Yeah, put differently, I just feel like Ujiri has been far to a fault developmental with his draft approach. And I mentioned this earlier, I don't know that the window can account for that. So I'm very curious to see if Ujiri can adjust in what he does now, where I hope he thinks the timeline is a little bit shorter than it has been in previous drafts.
Yeah, this is the moment. Ujiri has done a nice job since he's come here as general manager. Now, a lot of the pieces that he's reaped the benefit of were already in place from Colangelo, who we threw out of town as a mob with torches and sticks, and rightfully so. But Ujiri's made some swift moves along the way, getting out from underneath Rudy Gay contract, getting out from Bargnani, which of course allowed us, the Raptors, that is, to have this particular pick that we're talking about at number 9. And he's had some interesting decisions with free agent signings as well, whether it be Corey Joseph and Bismack Biyombo that the Raptors definitely reaped the benefit of in this past season, or whether it's Damari Carroll, who still has the potential to be a difference maker for this team, even though he was unable to perform at that level, largely due to injury during this postseason. Either way, this Raptors team is a top 5 team and is poised to take the next step. The draft this year provides that opportunity for the Toronto Raptors, given that they have 2 first-round picks, 1 in the top 10. Now, they can use this as an opportunity to stockpile assets for the future, or to deal with the potential of players leaving, whether it's Biyombo or DeMar DeRozan, or they can use it as an opportunity to see it for what it is. It's a gift and it's a freebie. Take it right now and attack, because Cleveland and Golden State have both shown in the finals this year that they are both susceptible. The Oklahoma City series showed us that, as well with Golden State, that these teams are susceptible. They are not invincible. They are very good. And the talent level between them and the Raptors, although there is a gap, the gap is not as significant as some people would like to think. The Raptors are closer than they to winning a title than they are to going back to the lottery. But so much depends right now on the moves that Masai Ujiri makes this coming draft night. It starts this draft night. It goes into free agency. This is the moment, Masai Ujiri, where you stake your claim to being the best general manager in the NBA, an award in which you've won and take great pride in. But now is the opportunity to see you do it with the Toronto Raptors. Okay, that's the final word here. I'm Steve Gennaro. Many of you know me as PhDsteve for many years on Raptors Republic. Again, the grandfather of podcasting in the 6. But now you can find me on All In Sports Talk, at All In Sports Talk, hashtag All In Network, where I host a show every single Thursday with Dave Hendrick at Dave Hendrick _AI, where we talk all sports, NFL, NBA, NHL, soccer, everything you can possibly imagine. So go give that show a listen, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, etc. And then Sunday mornings in Toronto on FM radio 88.9, Dave and I also host with Curtis Larson from the Toronto Sun a soccer-specific radio show, 88.9 FM, Sunday mornings in Toronto, 8 to 9. Give us a listen. We talk a lot of TFC, but also about Euros, Copa America, and basically Barclays Premier League, Bundesliga, whatever's going on in the world of soccer, we're going to talk about there on Sunday mornings. Now, my good friend Blair Miller, who's sitting in with me, he has a show that comes out every single Friday from the Fifth Quarter blog, at TF Quarter is Blair's handle on Twitter. You can follow him there, and that show's also on the hashtag All In Network, so you can get it Blog Talk Radio, or you can check out the website, tfquarter.com.
Bring your kids.
Yes, earmuffs for that particular show. That is not a kid-friendly show, but it is definitely worth a listen. And think Blair and his co-host Jer do a lot of great work. Again, all balls, no pucks. So you get no hockey, but basketball, football, baseball. You get lots of, golf. Actually, you get lots of good stuff over there too. Greg Mason had to disappear, but Greg is the brain from the South. He's at Votary of Hoops on Twitter. Go give him a follow. Always lots of good basketball stuff coming through his Twitter handle. And then, of course, at the University of Florida, my brother Mike, he knows college basketball, at Michael Gennaro, soon to be Dr. Michael Gennaro. Congratulations on completing your PhD. Mike Gennaro, boxing historian. Congratulations, Mike, on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Until next time, again, I'm Steve Gennaro. This has been, I guess, The Doctor is in. One more time for Raptors Republic. Shout out to the crew at Raptors Republic. If you like NBA and you like the Toronto Raptors and you like listening to NBA podcasts, then make sure Monday mornings you listen to Tamberlin Richardson, of course, who you know from Raptors Republic, who's also the managing editor at Space City Scoop and who has a show every single Monday morning on All In Sports Talk Network, hashtag All In Network, Tamberlin's Tip-Off, and in my opinion, it's the best NBA podcast out there. Okay, that's the last shameless plug. I'll be back again next year to do this because I do this once a year and then I go away on vacation. But more NBA talk, more sports talk. You can always check it out. Raptors Republic, allinsportstalk.com. Until next time, I'm PhD Steve. Thanks for listening. Peace.
I don't know. Either I'm off my nut or he is. Or you are. Is that your final answer?
Damn, I'm good! Can you feel that? Huh? Can you feel it, Captain Compost?
I can hardly contain myself.
Before this is over, I'm gonna need a whole lot of serious therapy. Man, I'm tired of being right.
Inconceivable!